If your select query has a join and returns the same row twice, you've hit one of the most confusing issues in SQL, and most developers fix it in the wrong way. I've been teaching SQL to developers for years, and in this video I'll show you exactly why these duplicates appear and how to fix them properly. We'll use a simple example so you can see what's really happening, and by the end you'll know how to confidently prevent duplicates in your own queries. And if you want to go deeper with SQL joins, check out my course Joins Mastery. The link is in the description. Let's start with two tables in the Chinook database, customer and invoice. An invoice belongs to one customer and a customer can have many invoices. We use the customer ID column in the invoice table to join the two tables together. So let's join them together to see which invoices belong to which customers. This query selects some columns from both tables and joins every customer with their matching invoices. Here's what the result looks like. This customer here, Leone Cola, appears twice because they have two invoices in the invoice table. We can see that because there are different invoice IDs. The join creates one output row for every match it finds, so multiple matching rows produce multiple results. What if we only want to see customer names? We can change our query to remove those columns from the select clause. We run the query and see the results. The number of rows should be the same, but we only see the customer data. It looks like there are duplicates here. The same customers are repeated several times, like we can see here with Leone. When you join two tables, SQL finds every pair of rows that match based on the join condition. If one customer has more than one invoice, SQL will return one row for each of those invoices. These rows might look like duplicates, but they're not. They represent valid relationships between your data. If you only want one row per customer, you need to tell SQL that by changing the query. There are a few ways to handle duplicates depending on what you need from the query. The first way is to use the distinct keyword. This will eliminate duplicate rows from the result. This is probably the most common way to do this. We run this and see the results. We now see each customer name once. No more duplicates. Adding the distinct keyword to the query will ensure it returns a unique list of customers who have invoices. It removes duplicates after the join, so you get one row per customer. This is useful if you just want to know which customers have made purchases. However, it may not be the best solution depending on your requirements. We only want to see the customer names, but we have joined to the invoice table. Do we need the invoice table at all? If we want to see the customers with invoices, we could use a subquery or some other approach. Another option is to keep the invoice data but use an aggregate function. We could show the number of invoices for each customer and use a group by. This will show a single row for each combination of the grouped columns. We run this and see the results. We can see one row per customer because we have specified that in the group by clause. We also see the count of records, which could be helpful. This is often the best approach when you want to summarize data instead of listing every row. But if it's not what you need, then you don't have to use this approach. Sometimes duplicates appear because the join condition isn't specific enough. If you join on the wrong column or forget part of the condition, SQL can combine rows in unexpected ways. It's worth checking that your join uses columns that uniquely identify the data you're trying to match. The condition is correct in this query. However, sometimes you'll have a table structure that means you need to join on two columns, or you'll have to use a start and end date to check which record is the active one on a specific date. Let's see another example where we add another table and it's not immediately obvious. Let's say we want to see the total spend for each customer from their invoices. We select the customer details and then sum the invoice total. We can write this query to see the customers and their total spend. We run this and see the data here. So far it looks good. Let's say we want to see the invoice lines as well, which in this database represent the individual tracks as part of an invoice. We want to see the total number of tracks ordered, which we can find by counting the records. We run this and see our results. We see the invoice total here as well as the number of tracks from the count function. However, you might have noticed that the invoice total has increased from earlier. The total now looks incorrect. What has happened? Well, when we added the invoice item table, there are now more rows in the underlying result set before we used the sum and count functions. We then use sum to total the numbers, and these extra rows make the totals higher. Let's see the details of this. We can look at the invoice data for this customer here with a customer ID of 29. I've removed the sum and count functions and added in the ID values so we can see which records are the same and which are different. We run this query and see the results. We look at the total column here, which is what we summed before. We can see that a few values are duplicated. Their invoice IDs are also showing multiple times. But the invoice lines are different. When we joined to the invoice line table, we added more rows into this result. The sum function then added up all of these total values even though they are duplicated. So the original total was correct before we added the sum function. This query shows that adding a join can cause rows to be duplicated, but we may not even see that the data is incorrect because it's hidden by an aggregate function. That's something to be aware of. How do we fix it in this case? How can we see the sum of the invoice total as well as the number of invoice line items? There are a few ways to do it. One is to use a subquery in the select clause to find the number of invoice items for each customer. Another is to separate these two concepts, the sum of total and the count of invoice item, into separate CTEs and then join them together. Either of those should give you the result that you need. You'll see even more duplicates when both tables have multiple matching rows. For example, in the Chinook database, a track can appear in several playlists, and a playlist can contain many tracks. If you join track and playlist through the playlist track table, each matching pair creates a new row in the result. That's normal behaviour for many-to-many relationships. It's not an error, but it's something to keep in mind when you design queries or reports. If you want to get better at writing joins and understanding how relationships affect your results, check out my course Joins Mastery. You'll learn all about SQL joins and become confident in using them. You can get it from the link in the description. So we've seen why joins can return duplicate rows. This could be because one table has multiple matching rows in the other. We covered 3 ways to handle it: using distinct, aggregating with group by, and checking your join condition. We also looked at a scenario where it might not be obvious if you're using aggregate functions. Now that you understand why joins can create duplicates, watch my next video on the difference between inner join and left join. Thanks for watching.